Good evening. I'd like to welcome you all to this candidates forum for the Village of Terrytown's mayor and trustees. I'm Susan Maggiato. I'm president of the Rivertown's League of Women Voters. Our co-sponsor for this forum is Mothers Out Front. The first thing I'd like to do is introduce our Spanish translator. This session is being offered in English with the Spanish translation. So Carlos Diaz de Leon will speak to us now.
Thank you very much, Susan. As was just said, my name is Carlos, and I will be the interpreter for all of our Spanish language listeners. I will now proceed with a message in Spanish with instructions for them to use the interpretation. Muy buenas tardes, bienvenidos, bienvenidas. Se está ofreciendo servicio de interpretación simultánea para esta reunión. Para hacer uso del mismo, por favor, desplácese a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen sus controles, haga clic en el icono de interpretación, parece un globo terráqueo, y seleccione Spanish o Español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom en celular, tableta, etc., presione primero los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Por último, si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, por favor seleccione Mute Original Audio o silenciar audio original. Gracias and thank you. This concludes my message.
Thank you so much, Carlos. And now I'd like to introduce Sasha Bernstein, who is from Mothers Out Front, our co-sponsor for the forum. Sasha?
Hi, thank you, Susan. My name's Sasha Bernstein. I live in Tarrytown and own a local business called Sasha's Seafood, and I'm a member of the Rivertown's chapter of Mothers Out Front. Mothers Out Front mobilizes moms and others around local and statewide initiatives to preserve a livable climate for all children. And I joined this organization because I wanted to be doing more to help preserve our planet for our kids. And this chapter has been great to be a part of, helping to move the needle on important initiatives. And some of those initiatives have been trying to get our school district to transition to electric school buses, and for new developers to use alternatives to fossil fuels such as geothermal for heating and cooling their buildings. And we want to thank the League of Women Voters, thank you, for all their work on co-sponsoring this forum, and to the candidates for participating. Thank you.
Thank you, Sasha. And now just a couple words about the League of Women Voters. We were founded in 1920, the same year that women finally were able to vote. For the past 101 years, the League has been a nonpartisan but political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government. We work to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and we influence public policy through education and advocacy. The League does not support or oppose candidates or political parties. We are truly nonpartisan, and membership in our League is open to anyone 16 years of age or older. I'd like to say a word about a recording policy, which all the candidates have agreed to. Only the entities authorized by the League may record or live stream this forum. Any authorized use of the recording requires the advance approval of the League. Only licensed media, which includes TV, radio, and newspapers, are entitled by FCC regulations to air portions of this recording. Anyone else who broadcasts or streams must do so in its entirety. Finally, this forum is being recorded in both English and Spanish, and it will be available for viewing. There will be links on the Rivertown's League of Women Voters website and Facebook page to the locations on YouTube. And with that, I will turn the meeting over to our moderator, Susan Polos. Susan is a resident of Bedford and a member of the Northeast Westchester League. Susan.
Thank you. Good evening. I am Susan Polos, representing the League of Women Voters. It is my pleasure to assist you today. I am merely here to facilitate a process between you, the voters, and the candidates. I live in Bedford and not in this district. You are here to listen to the candidates' views about significant issues in this community and to make your decision. There are 3 candidates in the mayoral race. Current trustees Karen Brown, Democrat, Terrytown United, Douglas Zolo, Village Alliance, and Paul Janos, Preserve Our Village. There are 9 candidates for 3 trustee seats. The Democratic and Terrytown United candidates for trustee are David Kim, incumbent, Rebecca N. McGovern, incumbent, and Efti Phillips Staley. The Preserve Our Village candidates for trustee are Stanley Freelander, Monica Reyes Grajales, and Mark Weinstein. The Village Alliance candidates for trustee are Peter Bartolacci, Ida Doctor, and Terence Murphy. We will hear from the mayoral candidates first from 5:30 until 6:30. We will then hear from the trustee candidates from 6:30 until 8. We will now ask the trustee candidates to turn off their video function. Thank you. We will hear from the mayoral candidates answers to questions that have been submitted by Tarrytown residents and reviewed by a committee of Tarrytown residents and league members. There will be no live questions during the forum. The only restrictions on candidate statements and answers are respect and civility. I reserve the authority to pause the proceedings to enforce the ground rules and the format. Each candidate has 1 minute for the opening and closing statements. They will have 1.5 minutes to answer each question. The timekeeper will indicate when 15 seconds remain in the allowed speaking time, and again, when the time is up. Each candidate will also have the opportunity for 1 30-second rebuttal. We will first have opening statements in the order of names pulled from a hat. The same order will be used for closing statements. Mr. Janos will begin his opening statement.
I want to thank you very much for the opportunity to address the residents of Tarrytown. It's exciting that this is the first time in many, many years that's been a full slate election. To have 3 different groups running, it really is a representation of the village. And I'm excited because I've lived here my whole life. I raised my family here. I had businesses on Main Street. I was mayor of Tarrytown for 6 years and trustee for 1.5 years. And very proud of the accomplishments I made back then and looking forward to having more accomplishments now. I think the important thing for this election is that it's not a party election. I think this is really a Tarrytown, a village election. And I hope that residents carefully look and listen to all the different facts and all the different things that the different candidates stand for and take that in consideration on November 2nd.
Thank you. Ms. Brown? Unmute, please. You need to unmute, please.
Yeah, sorry. Good evening. First, thank you, League of Women Voters and Mothers Out Front for conducting this forum. Thank you also to the residents of Tarrytown who are viewing tonight and sending in questions. I chose to make a life here in Tarrytown to raise my kids here in Tarrytown because I found a community of engaged citizens working together to improve the quality of life for themselves and also for their neighbors. Leadership in Tarrytown is changing, but that doesn't mean that we have to abandon the innovative, collaborative, inclusionary policies that put Tarrytown among the most desirable places to live in Westchester. Tarrytown is facing challenges and exciting opportunities. We deserve a mayor who will meet these both with the goal of protecting our village feel and the quality of life and space here. A mayor who will couple careful spending with equitable choices and maintaining a high level of services. A mayor who will lead with integrity. A mayor who can advocate on state and local levels for Tarrytown, and a mayor who has a track record of bringing people together. I am that candidate. I am that woman. And I hope you'll feel so at the end of this forum. And thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Paul.
Mr. Zolo?
Good evening. My name is Doug Zolo. I am a trustee in Tarrytown. I've been a trustee for almost 20 years. The first time I ran for office was in the late 90s. I was in office for a few years, and then I was out of office and back in for the past 16 years. I've lived in Tarrytown for almost 40 years, raised my children in Tarrytown. And the collective Village Alliance ticket has lived in Tarrytown for almost 125 years. I think we have a nonpartisan group. We're not affiliated with any political party per se. We have no special interests. We have no personal agendas. And again, we don't profess to work or be aligned with any political party. I've never been a member of a political party. Our platform is based on cautious development. We're not anti-development, but rather we want to preserve the character of our village. We want to take a holistic approach to development.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm now going to ask questions in a rotating order. You'll have 1.5 minutes to answer the questions. The first question, Ms. Brown, is what in your background has prepared you for the position of mayor?
Well, I feel like everything I've done has led me to be mayor. When I was in college, I started with NIPERG. I don't want to age myself, but we did a bottle bill. So I've been involved in keeping our community clean and safe and fair forever. I have lived in Tarrytown for 20 years. I've been very involved in the community. My professional experience is that of a sales broker, meaning I am experienced and I am trained in bringing people together and helping people reach the goal of everybody being successful and moving forward in projects. And you need that as mayor. There's a lot of voices in Tarrytown, and we have to figure out how to have them all heard and to move forward together, making consensus on the issues. So, and of course, I have the experience of being a trustee for 6 years, and I was on the zoning board for 10 years. So I have land use experience. I attend NICOM meetings and Westchester Municipal Organizational meetings, and I am very well versed on the topics. So you need to be that to be a successful business owner, which I am. So I understand budgeting. And I have the values that I think Tarrytown exhibits in our diversity and community feel.
Thank you. Mr. Zolo, what in your background has prepared you for the position of mayor?
Well, like I said in my opening statement, I've been a trustee for almost 20 years. And I've been here for the development of the waterfront when Hudson Harbor was built and the rec center and pool. I was on the board when we built 2 new firehouses and the village hall. I think I have more experience than anybody that's running for mayor in terms of the number of years I've been on the board. And I've run, with, as I said, as an independent, I've run as a Republican, I've run as a Democrat, because, in the years that I've run, as a matter of fact, the first time I ran as a independent in the late 90s because I didn't want to be affiliated with any particular special interest party affiliation, and I have no personal agendas. I've been involved in youth sports for many years. I was a president of the redevelopment of the Transfiguration School in Tarrytown. I run 2 businesses out of Tarrytown. I've lived, like I said, in the village for 40 years. My children were raised in Tarrytown, and my intention is to lead with a broad coalition of citizens so that everybody has a voice, regardless of where you live or who you are. It will be an inclusive and diverse group of people that will lead the village. I will not try to lead it by myself or with my trustees. Everybody in this village will have a voice, and we'll bring in people that are smarter than us probably, that will help us in different areas.
Thank you. Mr. Janus, what in your background has prepared you for the position of mayor?
Well, I have been mayor, and I was mayor of Tarrytown for 6 years, and I was a trustee for 1.5 as well. I also had a business on Main Street for 15 years. I had Main Street Cafe. So I know how tough it is to have a business on Main Street. I'm also proud of the accomplishments when I was mayor. We were able to open the waterfront. We were able to start the Halloween parade, Third Friday, the beautification of Main Street, Broadway. We were able to obtain grants to rebuild the Marquee for Music Hall, the current senior center. We revived programs like Art in the Park. We did zoning like historic zone, common zone, to keep any development away from Lyndhurst or any of the historical sites in Tarrytown. I think because I have the experience, I am from Tarrytown. I mentioned before about the Main Street and the businesses. I think this is a really tough time for businesses, for Main Street. I've been there and I've lived through all these things. And I think I would be the best representative for the residents and businesses in Tarrytown.
Thank you. Question number 2, first to Mr. Zolo. What do you value most about Terrytown? What do you see as the greatest opportunities and challenges for the village?
I think what I value the most about Tarrytown is the diversity and the inclusiveness. We have a very diverse community. And again, it doesn't matter where you live in the village or who you are, or what language you speak, or whether, if you've lived here for 5 years or 50 years, everybody is treated equally. In 1996, I elected to build a house in Tarrytown. When we had lived here for a number of years, and we could have gone and built a house anywhere in Westchester or lived anywhere we wanted to probably, but I elected to build a house in Tarrytown because we wanted to stay here. And I do value the diversity of the community and the fact that, our immigrant community is valued, treasured. We protect them. We make sure that they are protected in terms of from any outside interferences. And that was something that we did a couple of years ago. And I think that we have great opportunities to continue with the diversity, with the inclusiveness. We have a transformative police department. We have a very progressive police chief and cadre of officers that work under him. And the officers on the street are a diverse group. We have Blacks, we have women, and we have a number of Spanish-speaking officers. And that was something we consciously did over the number of the past few years. We started hiring local people for the police department, and that certainly worked in our favor. And I think one of the next things we have to do in terms of opportunities is clean up our downtown, because our sidewalks are broken.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Zolo. Mr. Jonas, same question. What do you value most about Terrytown, and what do you see as the greatest opportunities and challenges?
Well, I've lived here my whole life. I mean, I love Tarrytown. It was a great place to raise my family, to have businesses. I've met a lot of, great people over the years. I think the biggest challenges is going to be the congestion that we have now, the potential of high density development. Taxes are just way too high. It's tough for seniors, tough for people, to live with the taxes. We have to find ways to cut the taxes. I think also working with the school district. I don't see enough young people involved, and I would like to be involved with the school district and have some high school kids involved with the government. Transparency, open meetings, letting people speak, getting the public involved. I think those are all things that is a challenge, but we need to do that now.
Thank you. Ms. Brown, same question. What do you value most about Terrytown, and what do you see as the biggest challenges and greatest opportunities?
Well, I think what I value about Tarrytown is what everybody values about Tarrytown. It was just written about in the New York Times. And Doug said it, it's diversity. But it's not just diversity of cultures, really, although it is. We have diverse culture, about 30% Hispanic, just about 10% Asian. and a smaller Black community, but they are a very, very important part of our community because those families have been here for generations. And we all live together and we run this community together. And I think that's what we value most about our community. And also we have a whole a diversity of housing stock. You can live in a big house on a hill. You can live on a small apartment in the city, by the river. And that is under attack. We are losing the ability for people in the middle to stay here in Tarrytown. The houses that once were for the young families are very expensive now. So I think that's going to be a challenge because we're diverse in so many different ways, and the cost of our housing might change that. Yes, traffic is a problem, and we're going to have to figure out how to accommodate not traffic that comes from within Tarrytown, but also coming from without of Tarrytown. There's building going on to the north of us, there's building going on to the east and west of us that comes all through Tarrytown. So, and I value our open spaces, I value our views, I value our businesses.
Thank you. Okay, the next question will be first for Mr. Janos. Since we live in a small community with many people active in many roles, the potential for conflict of interest is not insignificant. What possible conflicts of interest might affect your performance as mayor, and how would you address those?
Well, I used to work for the developer at Hudson Harbor. I think if you're working for a developer or for someone that's potentially getting a job through the village, they're going to have to recuse themselves. I don't think you can work for someone and then be aligned with the village or make a decision with a monetary amount. I was mayor till 2006. I worked for the developer after that, 2 years after. But I was able to negotiate with the developer, the Department of Public Works, the Tarrytown Rec Center, the Village Hall, the Riverwalk, all those things before when I was mayor. But no, you would have to recuse yourself if you were involved with anyone that's in development or anyone that has something to do to benefit from the village.
Thank you. Ms. Brown, same question. Do you need it repeated or do you know it? Yes, oh, you're on mute.
Yes, I'm sorry, will you repeat it?
Yes. Since we live in a small community with many people active in many roles, the potential for conflict of interest is not insignificant. What possible conflicts of interest might affect your performance as mayor, and how would you address these?
That's interesting. Well, my entrance into politics in Tarrytown actually started as the land across the street from my house that was promised to me that would never be sold was sold to the village, was sold by the Rockefellers. And that's when I got very involved in trying to save open space here in Tarrytown. I'd only been here for a couple of years, but I knew this place was special and I wanted to save it. I was accused of NIMBYism. Oh, development, you don't want it in your, in your backyard. And I suppose that could be true. I can see it. But since then, I have worked to make that park more accessible to the public. And now it's a beautiful park that people in Tarrytown, I'm talking about Wilson Park, that people love. And I advocated for trails going through it. So I think I can separate the two. I have a house where not many people park. If the park became more popular, would there be parking on our streets? And yeah, I suppose there might be, but I dealt with that and I moved forward with that. I can't think of anything that is a real conflict of interest for me in Tarrytown. I try to put myself behind my decisions.
Thank you. Mr. Zolo, do you need the question repeated?
I don't, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Let me just say this to you. I may be the oldest candidate, so I've got a lot of life experience. I sleep very well at night. I tell the truth, I'm honest. And if I tell you something, you can put it in the bank. I have no conflict of interest, never have, never been accused of it. I think I said it in the opening statement. We serve no special interests. I'm not a part of a political party, so I don't owe anybody anything. And I have no personal agenda. I think it's almost, to even suggest that someone might have a conflict of interest, for me at least, is, I'm not going to say it's offensive, but I don't owe anybody anything. And if I don't get elected, I'll move on, and life is good. Good family, good business, and I live well. So you can go on. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question will be asked first to Ms. Brown. It would appear that parking and related regulations are not enforced for the tow truck operation on Wildey Street. How can the Board of Trustees address this?
We have addressed it in different ways over the years. There is a special parking permit that the towing company has. I do believe there is illegal parking going on down there, and I know that they're ticketed and they pay their tickets. I think it is unfortunate for the community down there. It's a playground, and those trucks can make it look more like an industrial park, and I wish we could figure out a way to get them off the street. That's what I have to say about that.
Thank you. Mr. Zolo?
The tow truck company that you're referring to has purchased parking permits for, I guess that's Cortlandt Street down there. Paul Janis would know. Is that Cortlandt Street, Paul, that runs along the train area, the train tracks? It's not Wildey Street where most of the problem is. I think it's
Parallel to the river.
What is that?
Parallel to the river.
Parallel
Street,
to the railroad tracks. So what we did was he parked his truck, say he pays tickets. It's kind of like UPS paying tickets in Manhattan. It's just the cost of doing business. So what we did was those spots that he used were not being used by parkers. The meters were not getting fed. So we developed a parking permit for the trucks so that he could park there legally and we would get revenue. All right. It is a difficult situation on Wilder Street on the one spot. That's where the Sarah Michaels Park, I think it is, basketball court, which makes it a difficult situation. But he also is the towing company for the village. So we do business with him. He repairs our vehicles. So there's kind of it's a difficult situation because while we appreciate some of the things he does, he puts us in a bad spot because he does park illegally sometimes. But we did come up with the parking permit initiative to try to alleviate the problem.
Thank you. Mr. Janis?
Yeah, could you repeat the question?
Absolutely. It would appear that parking and related regulations are not enforced for the tow truck operation on Wildey Street. How can the Board of Trustees address this?
Well, I know that's an industrial area, and I think both Karen and Doug answered it that there are permits, and the village sells a permit to park there. And he has that. And if he does get a ticket, he pays the ticket, and it is a cost of business. If he's parked there legally, he's parked there legally. That's pretty much it. It's an industrial zone. It's a tow company. It pays taxes to the village. They have their permits.
Thank you. The next question will be Mr. Zolo first. Many proposals before the Board of Trustees have environmental consequences. Would you commit to giving the Terrytown Environmental Advisory Council, TEAC, a more formal role on all proposals before the board that have an environmental impact?
That's a difficult situation, difficult question, I should say. I think a lot of our building codes now are very strict in terms of the green building, if you will, where developers have to meet certain criteria when they're building, and our building department holds the developers' hands to the fire to make sure that they meet that criteria. And also the state regulates a lot of that. So if you're talking about actual development, people building, whether it's a house or a five-story building, whatever it happens to be. Well, actually, we don't want five-story buildings, but a larger building. It's really up to the state criteria, the state mandates, the building, the local codes, and the building department. And TAC is involved to some degree, but it's more on rather than buildings. I think it's more on the lakes, the roads, how we the vehicles that we might buy, going back to I may say Sasha Bernstein, I think it was, maybe the police department should have electric vehicles. Electric vehicles are actually more powerful and faster than combustion engines right now. So I think there's a lot of things that TAC should be involved in, but as far as building codes, I think, again, planning department and state and local mandates rule the day.
Thank you. Mr. Janis?
Yeah, could you repeat the question?
Absolutely. Many proposals before the Board of Trustees have environmental consequences. Would you commit to giving the Terrytown Environmental Advisory Council, TEAC, a more formal role on all proposals before the board that have an environmental impact?
I think the planning board and the Board of Trustees, of course, any developer has to go through SECRA in making any types of decisions. But I think TAC should have a rep go to the planning board and to a Board of Trustees meeting. One member should go to be involved in it.
Thank you. Ms. Brown?
Well, I think it's an interesting idea to have a TAC member as part of the planning board, or planning board member being a TAC member of the committee. But the Tarrytown zoning code has specific rules about sustainability, and the planning board is obligated to follow that. I would hesitate to put another layer of approvals on plans that are going through our planning board. Residents and businesses know that it's already difficult to get through a planning board, a building, to get a building application. It's very expensive. That goes to the issue of affordable housing. So I think that we should keep environmental and sustainability issues very important, have them ingrained in our zoning, and I think look at having one of our members, also planning board members, also be a member of TAC, and to take back those ideas and those values.
Thank you. The next question. New York State has mandated ambitious climate goals of 85% reduction in emissions by 2050 and 70% renewable energy by 2030. Do you believe Terrytown's Board of Trustees can and should join the fight against global warming? And if so, how? Did you support Terrytown's decision to make 100% green energy the default in the electric supply for the village? Mr. Janos.
I think that anything green, any type of, whether it's geothermal, whether it's electric cars, all that is going to be great for generations to come for the village right now. I think we should be using more of a trolley system to get people around. Yes, I do support, having as much green as possible, but it just so it doesn't impact the business in a harmful way. But I think it is is something that, we have to look at. I think there has to be more electric car stations. There are things that we can do. Geothermal is a great way to save money and not use fossil fuels. Solar energy, wind energy. There is a lot of options, and I think we have to have residents educated on it. We have to be more educated on it and what the opportunities and what the costs are for that.
Thank you. Ms. Brown?
Can you repeat the question?
Absolutely. New York has mandated ambitious climate goals of 85% reduction in emissions by 2050 and 70% renewable energy by 2030. Do you believe Terrytown's Board of Trustees can and should join the fight against global warming? And if so, how? Did you support Terrytown's decision to make 100% green energy the default in the electric supply for the village?
Well, I think every human should be participating in the fight against global warming. And as the Board of Trustees, where we can lower our village print, we should and we do. We've done things like replace all the lights around town to LED lighting, to use much more less electric that way. We do get, I can't say we use 100% electric vehicles, but we have been an innovator in using electric vehicles for our community. We participate in buying groups with the other river towns to encourage our members to use renewable energies. And I think we have to lead by example by, yes, getting more electric cars, making sure our village employees are not idling their cars, using a green technology wherever we can, and encouraging it to our citizens wherever we can. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Zolo?
I did vote for the 100% renewable energy for the whole village. So I believe that's where we are now. We don't, we opted into the renewable energy. People have the option to opt out of that and go back to kind of they choose. And they both have been very competitive. We want it to be competitive because we don't want to make people that live on a limited budget to have to have the renewable energy and pay more for it necessarily. I think the electric vehicles is a big issue because, again, to Ms. Bernstein's point, police cars, they could be electric. The only electric vehicle now that we have in the village that I know of are a couple of parking enforcement officers' cars. One problem we had was we bought a senior van and it wouldn't go up the hills. Believe it or not, it struggled to go up and down the hills in the village. So, but as the technology improves, we can start buying more electric vehicles, which do emit a lot of carbon. We should do more solar panels where we can, so that we have our own energy, and when we have excess energy, we can sell it back to the grid. So, and I think we're working. Every person has a responsibility to reduce carbon emissions and to be aware of climate change, because the weather has become a factor, which is between Ida and Sandy and the snowstorm in October. It's very difficult. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Brown, the next question will start with you. How do you define responsible development? What is the role of the following factors, if any? Affordable housing, high quality job creation, climate change, quality of life issues.
It's a lot to remember. So smart development means looking at every project that comes into the village and making sure that it has a definable public benefit, and that it respects the character of our village. And it takes into account our problems with mobility and how we can grow without over inundating our infrastructure and our streets. We have a lot of places in Tarrytown that need improvement. North Broadway and its empty storefronts is on everybody's mind. And so we cannot stop improvements. We want to figure out how to get them done. That's my look on that. We should, can you repeat that? I'm sorry, there's so much in that question. But we also need to know where we're going. We have a lot of projects coming up. I think we need to look at them as a big picture and understand what's coming in our borders. There are studies that we can do. There are studies that we have to require developers to do. I think that we need to work together with the community to get an idea of what they want and what kind of studies they anticipate we should do to move forward.
Thank you. I will repeat the question for you, Mr. Zolo. How do you define responsible development? What is the role of the following factors, if any? Affordable housing, high quality job creation, climate change, quality of life issues.
Okay. One concern I've had with development is 29 South Depot Plaza was an example of what I would describe as development gone wrong. The building that was defeated was the length of a football field and 48 feet high. When the SAO, which had to do with that whole station area, was presented to the Board of Trustees, it allowed for 120-foot towers, which we said, no way, it was not going to happen. And we decided to possibly allow 60-foot buildings. And at 29 South Depot, we were going to allow a 48-foot building. But again, it was the length of a football field. And it was ill-conceived, I think, because there was so much truck traffic down there. As regard to, and that's what I call development gone wrong. And we have to be very conscious. When the original CVS plan on Broadway was put before us, it was over 200. I think I have the paperwork here, but it was about 225 residences, 225 residences in between Central Avenue and Dixon. And it was 5-story site. It was huge. It was just out of place, did not belong. And the only one that benefited was the developer. My concern today is that when we have a 10% affordable housing rule. If the developer wants to develop any properties, he has to have at least 10% affordable housing. I think in Yonkers, they just defeated a proposal for 20% because it would have been discouraged development. But anyway, we have to do more for our seniors. We don't have any way for our seniors to age.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There is a chance for one rebuttal throughout of all of this.
Yeah, so 30, is this your 30-second rebuttal?
Yes.
Okay.
So what I'd like to say about the projects that Trustee Zolo just talked about, they were defeated. We voted against them, and now there are no development plans for either one of those on the horizon. So those were voted down, and that is affordable. That is responsible development, looking at every project and taking into account and voting them down when they're wrong.
Thank you. Mr. Janus, same question.
Yeah, could you repeat the question?
Sure, absolutely. How do you define responsible development? What is the role of the following factors, if any? Affordable housing, high quality job creation, climate change, quality of life issues.
Okay, so all of those obviously are very, very important. This is the village of Tarrytown. It's not the city of White Plains or the town of a big town. This is a village. And I think we have to be very, very careful with the development. There should always be some type of public benefit. The other thing that's huge on any development that's coming in front of any of the boards right now is traffic. The traffic is terrible. and we have to mitigate the traffic. We're going to have the problems with the GM site. There has to be a look at traffic. Affordable housing, it is 10%. Maybe it should be 15%. But I have to stress that this is a village. And at some point, too much development, it's not going to be the village of Tarrytown. It's not going to be the quaint village. It's not going to be one of the prettiest villages. It has to be carefully monitored. The other thing is I'm questioned with 29 Depot Plaza, that the applicant did remove himself from that, but the zoning was passed to allow 75 units on 1 acre. And that I don't think it was responsible. And I think that should have been looked at a little closer. You can build 75 units on 1 acre of land. And I think Collins at the time legally, after that was passed, could put 95 units where the Butler style building is.
Thank you, Mr. Janis. The next question.
Moderator, may I have my 30-second rebuttal now?
You may.
Okay, on May 3rd, the SAO was defeated, which was a very unpopular proposition in Tarrytown. All development, whether it's 29 South Depot, the Botel, or the CVS land, all the developers have pulled their applications back. I believe they're waiting for the results of the election, and they're hoping that I will not win. That's my 30 seconds. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next question will start with you, Mr. Zolo. What are your visions for future development in the train station area, including the waterfront and the boat clubs? Does your vision include transit-oriented development as has been done in other Westchester municipalities?
TOD, transit-oriented development in Tarrytown, first of all, they'd have to be, I think it's within 100 feet of the platform, which 29 South Depot Plaza is. I don't know what's going to happen after the election. They may come back and try to build again. And then I think at some point in time, they may actually try to link up the American paper facility, which is next door to it, to become part of the same piece of land so that they could build that up also. I don't know what's going to happen with that. You know, we also have a Botel on the other side of the tracks, which is in the train station area. And I think that right now that's been pulled back, and I don't know how that's going to go. Very big, maybe too big for that piece of land. And down at the other end, we have the WY Boat Club. I think there are a lot of residents, and I think myself, all things being equal, I'd like to see the WY Boat Club continue to exist, but they would have to do certain things to comply with the wishes of the board in terms of, public access, building in case, you have to work within the base flood elevations. So I think the WY Boat Club could continue to exist. The Botel has to be looked at again. And again, the developer pulled back that application, and the TOD, which 29 South Depot fits into that criteria, that will rear its ugly head again, maybe after the election. But I think the building that was proposed doesn't fit.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Janos. Do you need the question again?
Sure.
What are your visions for future development in the train station area, including the waterfront and the boat clubs? Does your vision include transit-oriented development as has been done in other Westchester municipalities?
So I think Hudson Harbor, I would consider that a TOD because you could walk to the train. As far as the boat clubs, the WI Boat Club should remain with the members. I don't think that it should have went out to, if they're going to do they did a request for qualifications. I know that originally the boat club members were not allowed, then they were allowed to put a plan in. But the WI Boat Club should remain with the members and remain a local boat club. The Botel, it's too big. And I also question the lease that the current owner has for 99 years with the property adjacent to it. I think the lease has to be looked at again. It's a lease for the property. It's 99 years. And if I'm correct, I think it's around $40,000 a year. I just think it's too inexpensive for too valuable of a land.
Thank you. Ms. Brown, would you like to hear the question again? Yes. What are your visions for future development in the train station area, including the waterfront and the boat clubs? Does your vision include transit-oriented development as has been done in other Westchester municipalities?
Okay, so I will start on Depot Street, South Depot Street. South Depot Street, as it stands, is a blight. It is an area that needs improvement in some way. I believe that housing can be built there and would fit in really well with that neighborhood. It's interesting that the Franklin Courts development is going on at the same time, and those need to be looked at as one thing. That's my opinion about what's going on over there. What's going on across the river is that Hudson Harbor is a beautiful area. There are still areas that are still to be developed. There are plans in there, but there have been some rumbles about trying to get more units in there, and that has not been approved. The Botel has so many questions, I can't even start right now. It's an interesting concept, but so many questions regarding ownership of the land and all of that. It's true. The 238 South Green Street is a place that has a lot of potential. It's our duty to make sure we get the best use out of it for the people of Tarrytown. Washington Irving Boat Club is an important part of the community, and they should be part of our changes.
Thank you so much.
Could I add something with a rebuttal on that, please?
You may have a 30-second rebuttal.
Thanks. The other thing that with the TOD in the development close to the train station, which I think we have not done, is that I think Franklin Courts, Towers, all that property should have been included or looked at the same time. A low rise, low density residential in that area might be doable, but the way that 75 units in 1 acre is not the way to go, for that area. But it also should have included Franklin Courts looked at it, Towers, a bigger picture.
Thank you. Now it is time for our closing statements. As I said earlier, the closing statements will be given in the same order as the opening statements. They are 1 minute each. Mr. Janos will begin his closing statement.
Thank you. As I mentioned in the beginning, I've lived here my whole life. I have been mayor, was mayor for 6 years, and I had a lot of accomplishments. I just think the transparency, I think the lack of communication with the present board, it's just there's nothing for the residents to really hold on to. I see the business, I walk through the business area and talk to the business owners. It's a tough time for them. We really you need a mayor now that has experience in all aspects and somebody that can help businesses, help on taxes, families, development, that has a wide range of abilities to help the residents of Tarrytown. And I am the person to do that. I've done it before and I can do it again. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Brown, your closing statement?
Again, I want to thank everybody for putting this forum together and for listening in. I have been involved in Tarrytown for 20 years. I have been involved in our schools, in our community. I remain a part of this community. I live here full time. I have been a trustee for 5 years and had the good fortune of serving with Drew Fixell, who was a wonderful mayor. And from him, I learned the importance of being genuinely interested in the issues, in listening to the people, and to listening to the professionals who run this village. We have a wonderful village administrator. We have a great police chief. they need somebody, we need somebody to bring somebody to work with integrity, to protect what we love and protect our future. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Zolo?
Yeah, again, I want to thank the League of Women Voters and the mothers up front for this opportunity. But we talked about a few different developments and the boat clubs and, Franklin courts. What we really have to do is take a holistic approach to development in Tarrytown. Because if you take it piecemeal, if it's a patch quilt, you're never really going to know what's going to come next. And we've had traffic studies done in the past that have said several intersections in Tarrytown are failures already. And we really can't add new development. Edge and Hudson, on Hudson in Sleepy Hollow is only going to make it that much worse. And everybody should keep in mind that anything done on the west side of the tracks, anything additional to what we have already, is subject to the H bridge. It's the only way for people to get across the tracks other than go through Hudson Harbor on roads that the village does not own. So we're really in a very precarious position. We have a great police department. We have to work on certain budget matters, wasteful spending, streamlined procurement. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you to the mayoral candidates. We will now hear from the trustee candidates.
Oh. God help me.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I think maybe we'll take a 2 or 3 minute break so our moderator and timekeeper can get a glass of water, do whatever. So if we could just sit tight for a couple minutes, we'll be back here at 6:28. We'll be back here at 6:30, 6:31.
No, everybody's saying, get this and get this and get this. No, I was thinking of everybody, all the things that they get this and they get this. And they get this.
No, Doug was very good. Doug was very good too. Doug,
The only thing I will
you were
comment.
both very good.
Hey, everybody, just so you know, you should all mute
The very
yourself.
first question I
You
was
should all mute yourself.
I know. It's over.
Do I have to watch? I'm not even watching this. Oops.
Everybody should mute themselves, mute yourselves.
That's right. Let's charge them. And you can see yourself, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, if our other trustee candidates are within earshot, I hope they'd come back on now. Great. Okay. I think we have everybody, and I will turn it over again to our moderator.
Thank you. The Democratic and Tarrytown United candidates for trustee are David Kim, incumbent, Rebecca N. McGovern, incumbent, and Effie G. Phillips Staley. To preserve our village candidates for trustee are Stanley Freelander, Monica Reyes Grajales, and Mark Weinstein. The Village Alliance candidates for trustee are Peter Bartolacci, Ida Doctor, and Terence Murphy. Each candidate will share an opening statement of 1 minute. Candidates will have 1.5 minutes to answer each question, and the timekeeper will indicate when 30 seconds remain in the allotted speaking time. Oh, 15 seconds remain in the allotted speaking time. 15 seconds. And again, when the time is up. Questions from the audience were submitted prior to the candidates' night by email and electronic form. The audience will not be able to submit questions during the live event. At the conclusion of the question period, each candidate will give a closing statement of a maximum of 1 minute. 1 30-second rebuttal is permitted for each candidate in the course of the forum. Because of the number of candidates running, the league is rotating questions, asking each question directly to one candidate per slate. If another candidate who has not asked that question would like to respond, please raise your hand and we will provide you with a maximum of 1 minute or 1.5 minutes. And this decision was made in order to include more questions from the community. I will read the order of the opening statements so you all know the order, and then we'll start. David Kim, Stanley Freelander, Peter Bartolacci, Monica Reyes Grajales, Ida Doctor, Rebecca McGovern, Mark Weinstein, Effie Phillips Staley, and Terence Murphy. We'll start with David Kim.
Thank you for having me. My name is David Kim, and my family and I chose Terrytown because obviously, like many of the people who are already here and the ones who are wanting to come here, it's a geographically stunning area. It's locationally desirable. It's accessible. It's diverse. It's a great place. And one of the important things was that it was walkable for us. And so, but as much as it is walkable, we also understand that there are kids, that we all have kids and we all have fear them getting hurt. And so one of my main issues that I've been working on is making sure that our streets are work for drivers, work for pedestrians, and work for those who take other alternate means of transportation like walking and driving. Biking, sorry.
Thank you. Stanley Freelander.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to the community. My name is Stanley Freelander, and I've been a resident of Tarrytown for 50 years. I raised my children here. Currently, my grandchildren are being raised in Tarrytown. And the most simple reason why I'm running is I love Tarrytown. I've dedicated 49 years to the village as the planning board chairman. I was asked to be chairman by mayors over a 50-year period. I've served on a board for a long period of time, and I have a deep affection and love for the village and to preserve the village. But I also have great fear about the future of the village. And that's why I decided to run. I'm still a member of the planning board, and I still can contribute. But I feel I can contribute much more given my knowledge and experience of what has happened in the village recently. I have a great relationship in the past with many of the members that are running against me at this time. I respect their efforts and I respect the duty and effort that they've made to make Tarrytown better. However, sadly and disappointedly, they have failed in several respects, which forces me to run for office. And I hope I can do a better job than they have done. And that it
Thank
would
you,
serve
Peter
Tarrytown.
Bartolacci. Thank you, Peter Bartolacci.
Hi, thank you to the League of Women's Voters and Mothers Out Front for this opportunity. I'm an 18-year resident of Tarrytown. I live here with my wife and 12-year-old twins who attend Tarrytown Public Schools. I'm running for trustee because I care deeply about the town I've chosen to raise my children in. And as such, I want to have the opportunity to shape Tarrytown's future, which to me includes maintaining our charming small town village feel. I've been active in civics here since the beginning, started with traffic issues in my neighborhood, specifically speeding and lack of obeying of stop signs. That translated to actively advocating for traffic calming measures, which we were successful in, and we now have speed humps. That was just the beginning. I've been involved in the MTA cell tower and getting that removed, the SAO and educating the public and getting that downvoted. And I just want to serve and I want to make everyone's quality of life better. Thank you.
Thank you. Monica Reyes-Grajales.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Monica, and I may not have been born here, but this is my adopted home. My children were born here, they go to school here, and this is where we want to be. There's no place like Terrytown. It's just such a wonderful mix of just charm and diversity that you just don't find anywhere else around here. The reason I'm running is because I think that while Tarrytown is a wonderful place, it can be better. And it's not just good enough to complain, we have to do something about it. And I want us town folk to be listened to and to be given a voice in the process and what happens to our town and where we go from here, how we develop the town and how we address our issues, be it congestion, be it anything else that's going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Ida Doctor.
Unmute.
Ida Doctor, can you unmute?
Okay, I thought I lost you. Again, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to be part of this forum. I've been a resident of Tarrytown for about 42 years. My kids grew up here. I find it to be the most wonderful community I've ever been in. However, I'm concerned about the congestion here. When I first moved in, the GM plant was open, and I remember the traffic issues that we had from the GM plant coming through my neighborhood in the crest. And I'm very concerned about the future development of the community, especially Edge on Hudson, which will increase the amount of density and the traffic in the area. And I'm also concerned about, and I also want to be a part of the community to basically give a voice to other residents in the community about the issues that are going on, the building, the development, and the providing more affordable housing for the residents. We have a very diverse community, which I think makes Tarrytown incredibly unique to the rest of the river town.
Thank you. Rebecca McGovern.
Hi, good evening, everybody. First, let me start off by saying it's been an honor and a privilege to have served in the village of Tarrytown as a trustee for the past 14 years and as deputy mayor during the past year. I would very much like to continue my service, and I'm asking the people of Tarrytown to give me 2 more years. I have spent the last 14 years working at the village liaison to groups, including the Parks and Rec, our incredible senior citizens, the Traffic and Safety Committee, the Tarrytown Municipal Housing Authority, Comprehensive Plan Zoning Committee, the Warner Library Budget, and the Affordable Task Force. My work with these various groups has given me a very in-depth exposure to and understanding of the village code, the numerous village policies, and the overall budgetary process, all of which has helped me to serve the village. And I love Tarrytown. That's all I gotta say. Thanks.
Thank you. Mark Weinstein.
Yes, good evening, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. I've lived in Tarrytown for the last 5 years, and every day that I wake up, I realize what a great choice I made in moving down here. I grew up in Westchester County, in fact, the town of Greenburgh. So I'm very familiar with local issues, and particularly having been in Tarrytown for the last 5 years. My background is I'm an attorney. I worked in the state legislature, both houses, both the state Senate and the Assembly. So I'm very familiar with the need to rely on our federal and state officials when it comes to local government, and the need to have them assist in some of our local issues. Living in Hudson Harbor, I'm particularly concerned about the new development, of course, Edge on Hudson and the GM plant, and of course the H Bridge, and the potential overdevelopment of the waterfront area. I once lived in Manhattan, and I remember what they did on the Upper West Side, where they erected Trump Towers.
All right.
And it
Thank you
blocked
so
all the-
much.
Okay.
Thank you. Efti Phillips Staley. Please unmute.
Thanks for pointing that out. Hi, everyone. My name is Efti Phillips Staley. And just a quick thanks to the League of Women Voters and to Mothers Out Front for hosting this event. Just to tell you a little bit about myself, I am a proud pro-environment, pro-family, pro-safety on the streets Democrat. I might be the only one here to sort of call that out, but that is my political party, and it's something that I am proud of. I am new to politics. This is the first time I've run, but I am not new to public service. I have spent my entire career working in the nonprofit sector for the purpose of improving communities. My focus has been education. My focus has been social justice, and my focus has also been access to the arts for the public. A little about myself: I come from an immigrant family, a military family, and a family that's actually a mix of political parties. So that's something that I'm super comfortable with. I live in the village with my husband and 2 children. Thank you.
And finally, Terence Murphy.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to host this forum tonight. I'm a lifelong resident of the village of Tarrytown. I've been here for 45 years and multi-generational. Currently live with my wife and daughter in downtown. I'm a professional engineer with 25 years of experience and have been involved in this village on multi-levels over the years, including through various boards, youth sports, the fire department. I've been in for 28 years. I'm an ex-chief. I have a wide breadth of experience across many sectors in my professional life, and I think I have the right skill set to contribute to the success of the future of the village going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now go to questions. The first question will be asked of Stanley Freelander, Rebecca McGovern, and Peter Bertolacci, in that order. What in your background has prepared you for the position of trustee? First, Stanley Freelander.
First of all, I'd like to begin with mentioning that I've been the chairman of the Tarrytown Planning Board for 49 years and still a member of the Tarrytown Planning Board. I've had experience in educational area because I was the president and board member of the Irvington School Board system, in which my home is in the Irvington School District, but it's in the village of Tarrytown. I've served as the senior staff economist for President Johnson's Council of Economic Advisors. I've served as a consultant and advisor to Mario Cuomo when he was governor of New York State. And I've served as an advisor to Governor Ferre of the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico. I've had extensive experience in urban economic development. I've consulted with the City Council of New York City. I've had a vast experience in public service and in consulting for various government groups. I've had intimate knowledge of the development issues and the problems of the village of Tarrytown as my role as chairman of the planning board. And that is primarily the reason I decided to run. I'm very well qualified in most tax issues, fiscal issues, fields of expertise. I have a doctorate in economics from MIT. I'm currently professor emeritus at City College, the University of New York. And I know I can and will help Tarrytown be a better place. And I wish I had the opportunity that you can grant me by voting for my ticket and my election And with Mayor Paul, Janice, and myself, we will do an excellent job in bringing Tarrytown back to the
Thank you.
future.
Thank you. Ms. McGovern, what in your background has prepared you for the position of trustee?
Okay, so in my background, let's see, I've been a school teacher, I've been a mother, president of a lot of organizations, but the best thing about me, I think, would be I'm a very active listener. And I truly believe in bringing people in a collaborative way to the consensus about things. I'm curious, which makes me pursue and look into ideas, listening to fellow candidates. I'm sitting here spinning as I listen to each one of you on things. So I'm a good listener, but probably the fact that I've been on the board for 14 years and I've allowed people to teach me, and I've allowed myself to say, I don't understand something, and then I get told how to do it. So those are my qualities. I'm a good mom, I'm a good wife, and I love Terrytown. What else? Thanks.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Bortolacci.
Well, my formal training is as in the finance area. I am a CPA. I passed the CPA exam in 1991. So I think I'm quite qualified on the financial front. And, given that Tarrytown has $54 million in debt, that's an area I think that I could probably help Tarrytown a lot in. Unfortunately, I've also had an application pending in front of the planning board for, 9 years now. I am intimately familiar with the Tarrytown zoning code. Dare I say, I probably know more about it than most people, and for better or for worse. And I think that I could put to good use. I spent 4 years of my career setting up a shared service center in London for back office functions all over Europe. And one of our platform issues is trying to set up more shared services where we can gain efficiencies, possibly with other municipalities. I'm also an expert in procurement, which is an area where you can get a lot of savings. Civic involvement, like I said in my opening statement, from the beginning, I've been involved. It started with the traffic and the speeding in my neighborhood, and it ended most recently with the SAO. In between, there was the cell tower, multiple laws that made no sense that were being proposed and couldn't be enforced. I am a very good listener, and I am very curious, and I question everything, as some on the board can tell you.
Thank you.
And have experience with.
Thank you so much. According to the format, if anyone feels compelled to answer this same question, you may raise your hand, but I would like to get as many questions in as possible. So, but that's absolutely your option. So I'll go down. I will now go to question 2, and this question will be asked of Ida Doctor, Mark Weinstein, and Efti Phillips Staley. The question is, what do you value most about Terrytown? What do you see as the greatest opportunities and the challenges for the village? We'll start with Ms. Doctor.
Well, basically, the best thing about Tarrytown is the diversity. I've been here, 42 years. I've lived in other areas. I actually grew up in Brooklyn, and I moved from Brooklyn up to Westchester. And I think the biggest challenge right now is control of the development in Tarrytown. I'm very concerned about the traffic in Tarrytown. I don't know whether anyone else has noticed it, but the traffic going down Route 9 has accelerated in the last couple of months. It's really become a problem. And I'm really concerned about future development and what we can do to alleviate these issues in the town. I think the town itself has a lot to offer for the community. I think it's become a real destination for a lot of people. And I think a lot of the traffic is attributed to the fact that many people come up to Tarrytown as tourists. And that's impacted on the population and the amount of traffic we have here. But I think it's also a very positive note to Tarrytown. And I think what we're doing is, some of the development we're doing down on the river, I think that's only going to enhance some of the issues we have in Tarrytown.
Thank you. I think there. Thank you. All right. And that same question will be asked of Mr. Weinstein.
Yes, well, the name of our party is Preserve Our Village, and that's not by accident. So the question is how do you preserve the intimacy and charm of a small village and balance that with burgeoning development? And our party has some serious concerns about some of the development, the potential overdevelopment. What's the environmental impact? How does it impact the infrastructure? The parking. How do we deal with the issue of the Edge on the Hudson, which is on one end of this community, and all those families and the influx of all that traffic, which is difficult as it is in the morning. And then you have, on the other end of town, you have the Montefiore site, which will cause traffic as well, traffic congestion. So how do you maintain and have all this development and yet still maintain the charm of this village? I'm also, like I said, I'm very concerned about the development on the waterfront and how that affects some of the river views and bridge views from Main Street all the way into Hudson Harbor. So whoever is in office, and God willing, I would be voted by the electors, that would be the central focus of my service to the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Phillips Staley, do you need the question repeated or do you know it? Unmute.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I do know the question. Thank you very much. What I value the most in Terrytown is really the community. It's the children, it's the families, it's the people that I run into as I walk down Main Street, it's the shop owners. All of this adds up to making Tarrytown the village that it is. And I especially value the scale of Tarrytown. We're a village of 11,000 people. I think a village that size really feeds into the idea of what our greatest opportunities are. I think because we have the capacity to work together on a scale this size, we really can get a lot of things right. We can increase affordable housing without ruining people's views. We can do smart development. We can have really good, I think we can have tourists that really feed into our villages without impacting things like traffic. But it takes really careful planning, and it takes a team that could work together really well. It also takes a team that has good connections up and down the political spectrum, because a lot of our issues like traffic, pollution, that sort of thing really has to happen on a county-wide level, on a state level, and a federal level. And that's something that I believe we can really do. Our challenge, I think, is environmental resiliency. We really need to keep in mind how our village is going to survive for the next 200 years, and that's environmental sustainability. Thank you.
All right. The next question will be asked of Terence Murphy, Monica Reyes-Grajales, and David Kim. Since we live in a small community with people active in many roles, the potential for conflict of interest is not insignificant. What possible conflicts of interest might affect your performance as trustee, and how would you address these? And we'll start with Terence Murphy. Mr. Murphy.
Okay, so for myself, growing up in the village and being involved in many different things, I'm still an active member of the fire department, a Freemason, and we manage property downtown. I work for the city of New York for the water supply, which has business dealings with the village. From my perspective, I think we would really want to advocate what is right for the village when you're approaching these type of topics, and then recuse yourself as needed to not show any bias as far as any voting record is concerned. But we want to make sure whatever is before the village in whatever capacity that you're dealing with, you want to make sure it's really right for the village and how it affects the the future success of the village. So, for myself, the organizations I'm involved in, I do, I am cognizant that, there's a lot of interaction amongst various parties, but, my goal is to really see this village succeed and make the right choices based on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Reyes Grajales?
Thank you. So I actually completely agree with Terrence. There's two ways to address any conflict of interest. One is disclosure, disclosure, disclosure. People should be aware that there is a conflict. And the other one is, if there is a conflict, you should recuse yourself. You should not be making decisions or voting on behalf of the town when you have an interest therein. So that's it.
Thank you. Mr. Kim?
I think Terence Murphy and Monica has both stated very briefly and articulately about the conflict of interest. And I think Monica said that the disclosure, and then recusal if by any means if there are any conflicts. I am an architect, I'm an urban designer as well as a developer, and I work on small scale projects. And oftentimes I see around the village so many opportunities to improve, to infill smaller scale projects, smaller scale properties and the like. I have to kind of hold myself back and almost say I can't do those projects because it would be a conflict of interest as a trustee. But and so I think disclosure, and making sure that everything is above board, and if there's any impression of conflict of interest, be recusal.
Thank you. Okay, the next question will be asked of Mr. Kim, and then Mr. Friedlander, and then Mr. Bartolacci. This is the question. We received questions on the need in Terrytown for affordable housing for both senior citizens and young people. Do you favor raising the 10% requirement for affordable housing in new developments? And if so, to what level? What other measures could and should the village take to increase the supply of affordable housing? Mr. Kim.
I work in the development world, and I understand the economics behind it. And affordability, when you mandate affordability, it often what it does is it skews. You have a number of units that are affordable, and then the developer often has to make them up with more expensive units. And so what it ends up doing is cutting out the ones that are in between. So you get the wealthy, and then you get the low end of the scale, and then the middle gets squeezed out. So we do have a 10% mandate in the Tarrytown. I think if we're going to raise it, we need to make sure that it works only in instances where the projects are at a certain enough scale to make it work. Because if you apply that to smaller scale projects such as 5 units to 20 units, it will actually be a detriment to actually creating additional housing for the target people that we want. The way to do this is to actually limit the size of the units, so that the size of the units are studios, 1 bedrooms, and fewer 2 bedrooms, so that actually those are the types of units even a market. And so that's where I would stand.
Thank you. Mr. Friedlander.
Yes, I'm for more affordable housing. I think one of the problems we have is a misnomer about what we mean affordable housing. Using the AMI that the county uses for affordable housing skews it to people making incomes that are much higher than the average worker in the village of Tarrytown and first starting in their job. So a teacher, a fireman, a policeman don't make enough income to qualify in some of the cases for affordable housing at the current standard. I would rather see a 30% of gross income requirement for an affordable house And that would be lower than the actual rents that we now would generate under the affordable housing that we have at 10%. But nevertheless, 10% has to be raised to 15%, and probably we can give density bonuses to large-scale developments that require increased density, provided they can mitigate the traffic and provided they can provide something in the neighborhood of 20% of affordable housing or housing for 30% gross income people. Housing should be integrated. It shouldn't be separate buildings, and it should have different rent structures within the same building. And the size of the units in Tarrytown is not 7 units or less, do not require a affordable housing contribution. It has to be greater than 7 units. And most of the development we've been talking about are much larger scales, 80 units on Coco's property on North Broadway, and 29 Depot Plaza, the Ferraro property, had 95 units as the last proposal. So those units were only coming in with 10% as affordable housing. They're grossly underestimating the amount of affordable housing we need, and we definitely have to increase that to a reasonable percentage.
Thank you.
Of a meaningful contribution.
Thank you. Mr. Bartolacci?
Yeah, so in terms of affordable housing, I think what we have now is reasonable. It's 10%. I wouldn't necessarily be opposed, but I'd opposed to increasing it, but I'd have to do a little bit more research to understand the impact and potential tax consequences. But that said, I think the real gap that we have, Tarrytown does quite well in the affordable housing realm. We have quite a bit of our housing stock is considered affordable. But I think where the gap is on the senior side. And having residents be able to transition possibly from a single family house to a different kind of unit that is more affordable as they move on in their life and are on a fixed income. And I think that's an area that Tarrytown really needs to focus on. Particularly, I think the YMCA development is a good example of, a tremendous benefit to the village with the parking it's providing, as well as all of the affordable units. That is something that I think Tarrytown should be focusing on. Again, I'm not opposed to increasing the affordable housing limit on, or percentage on new development, but it's something I'd want to look at more closely because Tarrytown does quite well, is performing quite well in terms of what is available right now.
Thank you. The next question will be asked of Ms. Reyes Grajales, and then Ms. Doctor, and then Ms. McGovern. The question is, what would you do to improve the vibrancy of the downtown, including dealing with vacant storefronts on Broadway? So that will start with Ms. Reyes Grajales.
I think we can be a bit more creative with the downtown. There's two different problems, right? The first problem is it takes forever to get through any sort of planning or approval board in Terrytown. I'm a small business owner in town with my husband, and it took us 2 years from the day that we signed the lease to when we were able to open the doors on our business. And, we have 2 little kids to feed. It's not that easy. So I think, we need to simplify the way that we do that. But also we can get creative with filling that space. There's towns in Long Island, for example, that have partnered with art collectives, et cetera, and then say, hey, you can't just have an empty storefront. Work with local artists, put art up on those empty locations, make it look pretty so that when you're walking down the street, it's not an eyesore. We can do stuff. We are not at the mercy of developers, and we can take action to make our town still be livable. So that's it.
Thank you. Ms. Doctor?
I think the problem is that we have so many empty storefronts on Broadway. It has been a distraction. And I think the problem is we're kind of being held hostage by the developers that own those buildings that are making it very difficult for us to move ahead to fill that space. And I know that they want to build housing above those stores. And right now the spaces that are available are just much too large for any merchant to be able to afford the rent. there has to be some way of subdividing a lot of that empty stores, especially Mrs. Green's and the store next door. And it's really become an eyesore for Tarrytown and a real detraction to the area. And I'm just not sure how we go about handling the developer who owns that property, who's been paying taxes for every single unit. I believe he owns it from all the way from CVS down to the Lyceum building. And, you know, I kind of feel like he's holding the town hostage because of his need to develop and build apartments above the stores at a higher level than they're willing to grant him approval. So, you know, I'm not really sure, you know, how we could handle that right now because, you know, he owns the property and he's not being very flexible about how we can go handle the empty storefronts. Main Street, on the other hand, is, I think, doing very well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Phillips Staley, I see that your hand has been raised. Is this a rebuttal or would you just like to answer the question as well?
Just to, it's not quite a rebuttal, but it is a bit of
Well,
an
I need to know
answer.
which it is.
Okay, it's a rebuttal.
It's a rebuttal, 30 seconds, okay.
Great. So actually, this is, I would like to amplify, in fact, the comments on the creative use of the storefronts. I think that is absolutely the way to go with the downtown. I say that as a person who's worked in the arts for quite a long time and organized many arts collaboratives within spaces like this. Also partnering with artists through the Museum of Modern Art, through the Whitney. That is my background, and I think that's a fantastic use of the space.
Thank you
for
so
our businesses
much.
in particular.
Thank you. Ms. McGovern, same question.
Okay, thank you. I think that revitalization of the downtown, it's got a lot of parts to it. Yeah, you've got the physical part with the sidewalks, which I am totally embrace doing a completely and total redoing of it in a uniform way with reasonable expectations from shopkeepers and people to keep them nice. And then there's also things we can be doing in terms of, as a board, of marketing Tarrytown. You know, we've talked a lot, and I'm pursuing the idea, like putting together a nice little package of why you should bring your business to Tarrytown. What's here for you? What can we do for you? You know, you have to get a little marketing and get a little strategy going there. So that's another thing that I would pursue there. We have a placemaking committee presently in Tarrytown, and they are using their vision to fill some of our empty spaces around town. And I think that that particular group can be grown with some more volunteers and really become creative with what we can do with some of our empty storefronts. But I think sometimes we got to market the place a little bit too. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the next question will be asked of Mr. Weinstein and then Ms. Phillips Staley and then Mr. Murphy. This is the question. Municipalities across the state are adopting stricter green building codes in order to reduce emissions and improve energy efficiency. Do you support strengthening the village's building code with that goal in mind and/or requiring that solar energy generation be part of the design in any new development? So the first person is Mr. Weinstein.
Yes, absolutely. Study after study has shown that good environmental policy is good economic policy. And I would think that everyone would agree on this panel that one of our chief roles in public service is to leave a legacy and leave a strong legacy and respect our environment. So absolutely, I think that it should be strengthened. I think that that's the trend in the United States. It's certainly the trend in New York. And we should be very mindful of any impact that any project has when it comes to the environment, as well as we talk about the waterfront. What is the impact that the development of that waterfront is going to have on our waterways? We spent a fortune in this state cleaning up the Hudson River with the water keeper and the river keeper. So I think it's not just that area, but I think it's also our environmental attitude and policies towards the waterfront.
Thank you. Ms. Phillips Staley? You need to unmute, please.
Sorry. The short answer is yes. I agree with all of the previous comments. In addition to it being sound sort of economic policy, I think one of the most important things to note here is that it's also a safety factor as well. I bring that up because in my previous role at the Hispanic Federation, we worked really hard after the devastation of Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico to solarize as much of the health clinics across the island as possible. So the next time an environmental disaster comes our way, having alternative forms of access to energy is incredibly important. So it's two-part. One, we really have to do our best to preserve the environment right now for the future, but two, we have to be prepared and resilient to make sure that we stay functioning and safe in the event of a climate disaster.
Thank you. And Mr. Murphy?
Okay, so the subject of sustainability and green energy and this environment, it's kind of complicated. I think you really have to understand the maturity of the technology that's out there and how you can, incentivize that for what's going on within the construction world, whether it's a large commercial or small residential, whatever it may be. It has impacts, as was discussed, about what's really economic benefits and what's the economic cost for implementing certain different mixes of these types of ideas, right? That trying to push all electric vehicles, in theory that's great, but the practicality and logistics is tough. For myself, living in downtown, if everybody said you have to have a electric vehicle by 2025, we don't have the infrastructure in place. So there's a lot that has to go into really thinking this out and understanding the maturity of the technology and how it impacts everyday life to make sure you're getting the right mix. On a larger scale, by advocating green sources, solar, wind, water. It's good to have that there, but you also need the base load. I'm a big advocate of nuclear. Nuclear is something that provides what we need to grow as a society. So you have to really take it as a total, complete approach on how you want to approach sustainability as a whole moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question will go to Mr. Bartolacci, and then Mr. Friedlander, and then Mr. Kim. This is the question. Do you think it's important to make cycling safer for residents and visitors in the village and on Broadway? And how would you achieve it?
I am a cyclist. So I, obviously want what's best for the tribe, so to speak. In terms of safety, I guess what we're getting at is, do we want bike lanes on Broadway? And I can't support that right now. You've heard all of the issues relating to the congestion on Broadway. I've seen it get worse. And by implementing cycling lanes, you will reduce the amount of space for vehicles, which, when you have the same number of vehicles and you reduce the space, that's going to cause problems. We're also going to lose parking, particularly going through Tarrytown, at the Main Street and Broadway intersection there. So I'm not an advocate for cycling lanes. We have a lot of cycling paths in the area, and there are ways to get around Broadway using the side streets. I have seen an increase in cycling traffic in front of my house in Miller Park. I think it's probably as a result of the bridge path. So, I'm all for cycling safety, but that involves drivers driving cautiously, but also cyclists obeying the law. And that is a big problem. A lot of cyclists don't obey the law and don't follow stop signs and traffic lights. So
thank you. Mr. Friedlander?
Yes, thank you. I am a cyclist, but not at my age. I was a great youth cyclist. My great aspirations when I was younger was to ride a bicycle from the Bronx, where I grew up, to Westchester, which was bucolic and very different from the Bronx. I support bicycling. I think it's great for the environment. The problem is it's not a realistic solution to our problem. Our problem is Route 9, the major highway running north-south. Truck traffic is a major issue for safety and health of our citizens and for our children, especially for our children. There's no room for bike lanes on North Broadway. It's just impossible. It would either increase the congestion of cars, it would increase traffic accidents with large 18-wheel truck traffic with children riding along the bicycle paths. Bicycle paths have to be a certain dimension to be safe, and it has to be certain guardrails to be safe. In fact, the Cuomo Bridge, or the former Tappan Zee Bridge, to be more accurate, that bridge has a bicycle lane and a pedestrian lane. It is also poorly designed, in my opinion, because if you're walking there with two people hand in hand, there's no room for a bicycle to pass. And bicycles go in both directions. So it was not planned properly. And that kind of bicycle lanes on our streets would be a catastrophe. We need to think of other more creative solutions to get people around the village. Obviously, more walkability would be better sidewalks, better lighting, better signage, all of that would be valuable.
Thank you.
Substitute. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Can you
Mr.
repeat
Kemp.
this thing? Can you repeat the question again?
Yes, I can. Do you think it's important to make cycling safer for residents and visitors in the village and on Broadway, and how would you achieve it?
I wouldn't consider myself a cyclist. Actually, I ride my bike to get around the village, to get myself around the village, because initially we didn't have a car, and we had two little kids. And so that was the kind of the best way to get around, simply because there just wasn't, like the previous, Stanley, Dr. Freelander and Peter mentioned, there isn't room on some of the streets with cars on it. The question about bike lanes on, I think when we're talking about Route 9, I think there are places where it may be appropriate, which is main section between Franklin and where WI is and down to the SUP, where there's no parking there, and the road is wide enough to accommodate almost 4 lanes of traffic. I think the best way to get to make it safer for everyone, simply not only those who are getting around on bikes, as well as those who are walking around, would be to actually slow down, figure out ways to slow down the traffic, so that slow down the speed, the rate of how fast people drive, so that it's manageable, so that they have enough reaction time, and also it actually would increase the capacity of the roads.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, the next question will be for Ms. McGovern, and then Ms. Doctor, and then Ms. Riz Grajales. This is the question. How do you propose to balance the rising costs of running the village with the need to contain property taxes? Do you foresee a time when our taxes could be lowered? Would that include making budget cuts? And if so, what would be cut? We'll start with Ms. McGovern.
Okay, well, I knew we'd get around to money at some point. So when I look at the Terrytown budget, I look at things and I see that there's so much in that budget that we have to do. And there's very little left over in our budget where it's called discretionary. So for me, the way to lower taxes and not get rid of services would be to find more revenue. We do have some options available to us in the village, in my opinion. I mean, we do have a fitness center that we could, with a pool that we could bubble and make that a year-round thing. Thank you, Stanley, for that. We also have tennis courts, right, so that we could bubble and use those year-round too. So, you know, listen, we don't want to cut our services. but we don't want taxes to go up either. So we have to be realistic. You certainly don't want to borrow more money. You certainly want to find more revenue. That's my, so my goal would probably be to look around and find that. And to whatever else we can do to help lower those taxes, I am in favor of. I just don't have a great idea right now. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Doctor?
Well, I kind of agree with Becky. I said, my taxes have gone up tremendously. And I think since we had the Greenberg full assessment done 2 years ago, I think the taxes have risen dramatically. But I'm not quite sure. Being new to the politics in Tarrytown, I'm not aware of what the budgets are currently. I do know that there's a way of maybe raising the dues to the recreation center and some of the other areas, because I know the dues are pretty low. I don't know that they're getting a lot of revenue from the new recreation center. I know there's been talk about putting a bubble over the pool, which they could probably access more revenue, but I'm not quite sure where they can look for more revenue for the community. And the taxes are going up dramatically. And I think it's been much harder for the, I'm on a fixed income right now. I've retired. I'm still living in the house, and the taxes, although the mortgage is paid, the taxes are a real issue, and they keep going up. And I don't see a relief at hand right now, and I'm not quite sure where they would get the additional revenue. Maybe, hopefully, maybe when they start filling in the spaces on Broadway, that will bring in, higher taxes and more revenue if we are able to fill those storefronts. But right now, I'm not quite sure where we could look for the extra money. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Reyes Grajales?
Hi. You know what? I can't even disagree with you. I believe since we moved into our home, honestly, our taxes have gone up about 100%. And the Greenberg assessor has been horrible for most residents. So this is a situation where we need to be looking at the other river towns, at the other towns that are part of Greenberg, and working together. Perhaps instead of having there be a Greenberg assessor, there be a village assessor, someone who is not taxing us at the rate that we're being taxed right now. No one wants to see less services. That's not what we're looking for here. There's just got to be smarter ways of doing things than what we're doing right now.
Thank you. So, Mr. Freelander, would you like to answer this question, or is this a rebuttal?
No, I would like to answer the question.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I feel I have a vast experience with regard to fiscal policies, and I think I may be useful to the village. First of all, I'd like to say that we missed opportunities in the past few years of getting revenues from sources that were basically given to us, and we didn't take advantage of it. And I'm alluding to the fact that we had a $22 million impacted village program for the Barrio Como Bridge. And we did not receive an equitable fair share of that amount of money. We lost over $5 million by not having Hudson Harbor completed, $5 million in taxes over the last 8 years by not having Hudson Harbor completed, because we allowed the Como Bridge construction program to take place on Tarrytown's property without any benefit from the impacted village fund. That was a very, very large amount of money that we all had to pay for in our taxes. We also lost opportunities in the sense of trying to fight the Greenberg assessment. We also lost opportunities of trying to protect our village and our residents with the salt tax. I drew a blank. I gotta have to say this. President Trump actually put a salt tax on us where we pay and gave up an exemption that saved a lot of middle-income people a substantial amount of tax money that they now pay to the federal government. And we need to have zero-based accounting, a zero-based system in which we look at every government agency with a zero base, asking them to justify their expenditures so we can improve productivity and efficiency. Something I did for Mario Cuomo in the state of New York many years ago. We need to do those things to make it easier for us to live here. I lost that.
The next question will be asked to Mr. Murphy and Ms. Phillips Staley and Mr. Weinstein. The question is, what would you do to make the village an inclusive place for all residents? Mr. Murphy.
So I think that's a pretty wide topic, what the definition of inclusive is. I think, we're a very diverse community. Growing up here, we had many different representations of various countries and languages, whatever it may be. I think we have a very inclusive community right now as it stands. I'm not sure what else we need to do. We have various activities that go on throughout the year, hosted by many organizations throughout the village, including the village itself, that provide a lot of different outlets for everybody to express themselves. I'm not sure what else we need to focus on to grow that at this point, but I think Tarrytown's a very inclusive, diverse village, and I think at this point we do a very good job in providing that type of climate for many different segments of society. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Phillips Staley?
Thank you for the question. To me, inclusivity means the ability for everyone who lives here to participate equally in what we have to offer. And what that means in terms of government is the ability for everyone to participate equally in that respect as well. A critical way to help make this better, because there isn't equal participation at this point, in my opinion, is two things. One is having village resources be accessible to people in ways they can understand. It's not just about language, but it's about accessibility of information. There's that, and in languages that our diverse community speaks. And then the other critical part here is receptivity of information from our residents. The village needs to be able to hear what people have to say about their experiences and address them in ways that are accessible. And we're talking about language, we're talking about a lot of, you can even lump in permitting and a variety of things. I myself have struggled to get certain permits for things. So that is how I would do it, is I think what the village should do to truly become an inclusive government.
Thank you. Mr. Weinstein?
Yes, to me, inclusivity is not just racial diversity, but it's socioeconomic diversity. And we discussed previously the notion of when there is a new development, that a certain percentage as a requirement to a developer to come into this community, there has to be affordable housing or some sort of lower income housing that's included. And it's so important to have you have senior citizens, you have youth, you have racial diversity, you have socioeconomic diversity. We should be respecting our seniors and having more senior programs. We should be expanding our youth services. Ms. McGovern talked about the rec center and making that more open. So I think there's a lot of work to be done. I think that we're on the right track with some of the things that we've said here today, but we can always do more.
Thank you. All right. Thank you all. The next question I will ask Mr. Bartolacci, Ms. McGovern, and Mr. Freelander. It's a question that was asked of the mayoral candidate. So if you were listening, you heard their answers. This is the question. Many proposals before the Board of Trustees have environmental consequences. Would you commit to giving the Terrytown Environmental Advisory Council, TEAC, a more formal role on all proposals before the board that have an environmental impact? So, Mr. Bartolacci.
I think the Tarrytown Environmental Action Committee is quite involved as currently. We hear from them a lot, at least in my experience in watching Board of Trustees meetings and participating in Board of Trustees meetings. They seem to have something to say about pretty much everything in terms of development. I know they were heavily involved on the SAO side in opposition. It's certainly something I'd be willing to look at, but I would also want to, understand exactly to what degree, when you say formalize it, what does that mean? Because right now they're involved already. I guess, if you're saying they would have to be involved or be compelled to be involved, I can't say that for sure. I'd have to look at it more and understand exactly what the impact might be. We don't want to delay things. You've heard talk, by other folks about how difficult it is to get things moving and to get things done. This to me seems to be adding another potential layer, which you arguably is already there. So by formalizing it, you're just making it almost compulsory. And that potentially could lead to more inefficiencies. So, no, I'm not willing to commit simply because I don't know enough about it yet and would really want to study it and make sure that the right decision is made, because the last thing we want is to delay or, make things more difficult for people.
Ms. McGovern?
Could you repeat it for me, please?
Sure. Many proposals before the Board of Trustees have environmental consequences. Would you commit to giving the Terrytown Environmental Advisory Council, TEAC, a more formal role on all proposals before the board that have an environmental impact?
Well, thank you. TX certainly is one of those committees that has really helped not only it's helped me personally as well as I think other people in our community. They have brought to light so many environmental issues and so many, not only issues, but they provide solutions to these issues, which is even better when they come up with their ideas. So it's just they're an incredible bunch of people. Now, whether or not they should have a formal place on the planning board would probably have more to do with not so much that they came from TEAC, but are they qualified and do they have the interest to want to serve on this committee? And would they, I think the qualifications have to be there. So I can't commit to a formal thing. I just think they do an incredible job of bringing things to light. Environment has been in almost every issue tonight in these questions. So clearly it's something that they should be participating in at some government level. I wouldn't have a problem at all with them being enhanced in terms of their committee and helping us do a better newsletter. I would love for them to do a television program on this and really use our public access TV. There's just, because let's face it, if we don't do something about the environment now, and if we don't get on board, we're all gonna suffer from that. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Friedlander.
Can you hear me? You can. I can't hear. You can hear me?
I can hear you.
You can? Okay. All right. Thank you. It's an interesting question, and I've given it a great deal of thought over the past 50 years. The fact of the matter is, as most people know, any development that takes place in the village has to pass muster with SECRA, which is the State Environmental Quality Review Act. And as the planning board, we've heavily relied on recommendations and comments and input from TEAC, especially its illustrious and historical leader in Carol Griffiths, who's did a marvelous job for the village. We've always respected TEAC. It's always been in all our deliberations and considerations, and we appreciate their work. It wouldn't be a village the way it is without their efforts, because they've done great work for the village. As far as a formal organization that would have legal powers, I think I'm against it. I thought about it carefully, and I think that it's just another layer of review that is already incorporated in our current laws, and that it would just make it more cumbersome, create more delays, and basically make it difficult for projects to move forward in a timely manner in a difficult time. So while I support and appreciate and respect their work, and it's always been included in our decisions, I would have to say respectfully, no, I don't think it should be a formal board. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question will be asked of Ms. Phillips Staley, Mr. Weinstein, and Ms. Doctor. What are your visions for future development in the train station area, including the waterfront and the boat clubs? Does your vision include transit-oriented development as has been done in other Westchester municipalities? We'll start with Ms. Phillips Staley.
Sure, thank you. I think having spoken with residents about this issue in basically every part of the village, I would say my vision is one that enhances the space, that creates more access for people to enjoy the waterfront, which is incredible, that takes into account its history and its beauty and preserves that. I think there are also opportunities for additional housing, because we know that affordable housing and housing in general is in a serious point of crisis right now. But I don't think that has to mean that people's views will be blocked. I don't think it means additional density. And I believe that there are enough smart people in the room to create a situation where traffic is not worsened. So that's how I approach it. That's my vision. It's an incredible asset. And with the right people talking about it, the right vision and the right consensus across the village, we can make something extraordinary happen for the future.
Thank you. Mr. Weinstein.
Yes, I'm going to make this very simple. If anything is developed down there, there needs to be taken into account the H bridge. It's really actually quite simple, because that bridge is becoming more and more cumbersome in terms of traffic, ingress and egress, and nothing can go up until there's a proper study done to either come up with an alternative to alleviate the traffic, or you just can't do it because there's too much density there. With regard to the Washington Irving Boat Club, I know that there were 5 proposals that had been proffered pursuant to a request for proposal. I'm an advocate for the actual boat club and the members that have been there for years, have paid their dues, and I would like to work with them so that they can properly develop it. I think they care about that area. They have an institutional knowledge of the area. They care about the environment and the impact of what's done there. And I don't think we just need another huge big box restaurant down on the waterfront that does not account for the culture and history of that boat club.
Thank you. Ms. Doctor?
Yes, I've reviewed some of the proposals I've had for the waterfront, and I agree with everyone that I think we really should be leaning towards the Washington Irving Boat Club because of the history in the area. And I think that their commitment to Tarrytown, as opposed to some of the proposals that came from some of the New York City developers. With respect to the H Bridge, I don't think the development on the boat club is going to have as much impact as the completion of the Edge on Hudson on the H Bridge. Indeed, the proposal on the waterfront is certainly going to add traffic to that area, but I think Edge on Hudson is really going to be much more of an issue that we have to address, because that bridge cannot handle the kind of traffic that's coming over. It's an accident waiting to happen. They don't really have any, I think there's a room for stop signs or stoplights or traffic lights in that area, because people are just running up and down the H Bridge, and it just seems to be a real problem. But I think development on the waterfront, indeed doing a restaurant, developing the marina, but I don't think there's room for any further housing down there. I don't agree with building any more housing down in that area. I think there's more than enough. And I think having this recreational development is probably what we really is the best thing for Tarrytown right now. Thank you.
Thank you. We have time for one more question. This question will go to Ms. Reyes Grajales, Mr. Murphy, and Mr. Kim. This question was also asked of the trustees, of the mayoral candidates, sorry. It would appear that parking and related regulations are not enforced for tow truck operations on Wildey Street. How can the Board of Trustees address this? Ms. Reyes Grajales.
So that's a difficult situation that honestly I'd like to get more information about and learn. It's my understanding from having listened to the prior debates that unfortunately the parking there is permitted. So I think there just needs to be more information before we can take additional steps on it.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy.
So I think, what the board is doing currently as far as permitting parking down there and issuing summonses as needed, depending on what regulations they might see being violated, is addressing the current situation. I know, there was a focus in that corner. It was discussed earlier about that being an industrial zone, but we need business in the area and we need people that will contribute to this village. And I believe that business does that in an immense capacity. And there's other areas of the village where enforcement would readily help some quality of life issues. Downtown, if you were worried about enforcement in downtown, you'd probably make a pretty, quick impact on what you're seeing as far as revenue generation and quality of life concerns. So as far as the towing company, is concerned, I think the village right now is handling it best possible. And I think, moving into the future, we do need to get a little more information on the best possible solution and to serve the needs of any residents in that area or any other concerns that might be brought up in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kim.
Like Monica and Terence mentioned, that it is a difficult topic. And I think we all know, it is Stolowski Towing. And, prior to the recent kind of work that we had on our board meetings about a commercial parking permit, I had no idea that we actually had that category down in that area. I think the first thing to do is to probably actually just look at the issues, look at the problems. What are some of the issues that are affecting the public? And then look at the needs of the business and actually work with the business to try to figure out a nice, happy ground. And I think that would be the first thing to do, rather than, I know that right now it's simply a transaction where it's a parking permit and he continues to pay, Mr. Stolowski continues to pay. And I think it's admirable in that sense, but there are bigger issues. And so I think that's something that we have to look at it together and look at it as a community with him and as an upstanding citizen of this community. We'd ask him to contribute. What does he think that he can do to make this situation better?
Thank you. Now it's time for closing statements. 1 minute closing statements will be given in the same order as the opening statements. I will list the order so that everyone remembers. David Kim, Stanley Freelander, Peter Bortolacci, Monica Reyes Grajales, Ida Doctor, Rebecca McGovern, Mark Weinstein, Effie Phillips Staley, and Terence Murphy. We will start with Mr. Kim.
My family and I, we moved here because we felt that Tarrytown is an accessible place at the time that we moved here, and it's a very welcoming place. The physical environment and the location is just wonderful. But I think the reason why I'm running is because we want to keep it, we want to work on the aspects of accessibility can be challenging. And it has been challenging even since we've moved in here since 5 years ago. Affordability is a big issue. So that's why I'm running, that we want to make sure that it's accessible and that we remain a welcoming community for all people. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Friedlander.
Yes. The reason I'm so much enamored and in love with Tarrytown is represented by this meeting tonight. All of the candidates are diverse and interesting, thoughtful, respectful, and talented. And I have great respect for each of them. However, the issue is not popularity, and the issue isn't our wonderful citizens. The issue is, what can we do to preserve our village and make it better for the future? And I believe that Mayor Janice, myself, and our two new people, Monica Reyes and Mark Weinstein, are the people to do more for Tarrytown in the future and preserve our village. We know the issues, we have the experience, we love the village, we love its charm, its history, its architecture, its river, its lakes, and we will do a better job than the other candidates. We have the experience, and the opportunity was given to those people in the current administration, and there are many, many mistakes made that could be corrected, and there are other opportunities that have not been reached out and achieved. And we can do it better than the other candidates. Thank you.
Mr. Bartolacci. Please unmute.
Sorry about that. So when I moved here 18 years ago, I was a newlywed, and we needed a place to live, and we were both working in Manhattan at the time, and Tarrytown seemed like a logical place. I grew up in Upper Nyack. If you had told me that in my future I would end up in Tarrytown, having grown up in Upper Nyack, I would have said you're crazy. But anyway, we ended up here because of its amazing location and ease of commute into the city. We rented for 6 years, and we ended up buying the house across the street from where we live. And the reason we did that is because we just loved Tarrytown so much. I want to continue to love Tarrytown, but my concern, as has been expressed many times, is congestion and new development. And I think our ticket has been consistent, and Doug Zolo has been very consistent on controlled development and responsible development. And that's what we will work for.
Thank you so much. Ms. Reyes Grajales.
This is probably the first time I'm seeing all of the candidates in one spot. And I can tell you, just having listened to every single one of you, everyone on this conference, on this video, loves this village. That's just a given. I mean, we all want to be here. But what differentiates us, the Preserve Our Village ticket, is the fact that we're mixing great experience with Paul Janos and Stan and new ideas between myself and Mark. And I think that we provide a good balance to this town. We want to listen to the population. We want to help out, and we're here, and I think we're the best ones to do that for you.
Thank you. Ms. Doctor.
Well, as I said, I'm very new to this process of the town politics. I don't have a lot of experience to bring to the table, but however, I have many years of administrative experience working in healthcare for upwards of 50 years. In the last 30 years, I've been at the Westchester Medical Center, and I've had a great deal of administrative experience. And I think at this point already, I think bringing in new ideas is very important to the town. I don't have any preconceived notions of what happened prior to this, but just to go forward, just bringing some new ideas. My goal is also to focus in some on healthcare to the community and healthcare to the people that are not, fully covered by, insurance, and just, developing some kind of, program with Phillips and other areas in the health centers in the area.
Thank you. Ms. McGovern.
Hey, thank you. It's been a great night, and I agree with what everybody has said. It's really, this is part of the diversity part, is looking at the boxes here. I love Terrytown, as we all do. I want to continue my work. I feel that I have been a very, I've been a trustee that has had no agenda, and I truly, truly look at my job as being somebody who speaks for the 11,000 people behind me, and I take that very seriously. representing everybody. I think our ticket is diverse. I think we have creativity. I think we have intelligence. I think we have humor. I think we don't have agendas. We love Tarrytown, and we just want to make it the best place. And I think we're the best team to do it, and we'll get it done. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Weinstein?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to participate, and I think everybody was had an effective position and to tell. One of the great things about the ticket that we have is that we're truly independent. Nobody on our ticket has, we're not on speed dial with the county chair or the town chair. Preserve our village is not just a name, it's what we believe. We also have a passion for this town. We have all said that we do not look at this position as a part-time job. This is a full-time job that requires full-time attention to the problems and issues facing this village. And we have the requisite experience. Me in particular, I would like to bring my experience having worked in Albany and bring some a new perspective in working with our state and city and federal actors. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Phillips Staley?
Thank you so much again to the League of Women Voters and to Mothers Out Front, and really a pleasure to be on this panel with everyone who's here. Just quickly would like to say how proud I am to be on the slate that I am on. I do think we have the right set of skills, experience, and new ideas as well. But I do think one thing the slate agrees on completely is that our issues and our problems here are not isolated. We are situated in a county, a state, a nation that has real problems around diversity, around affordable housing, around so many things. And we can't do it alone. We cannot solve these things alone. We can solve it through our partnerships and by bringing resources to this village so that we can all thrive and live our best lives. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy?
I just want to thank everybody again for being here tonight. I think this was very productive. As for myself, I had a lot of professional opportunities to leave this area over the years, but I stayed and made it a choice to raise my family here and continue my family's history because of what Tarrytown is and what it meant to me, growing up over the years, the people, the proximity, the resources. I think we all care about that. I know in Village Alliance, we want to focus on, the quality of life issues downtown, the development throughout the area, how we address debt and taxes, and really what makes sense to secure the future for our next generations that are going to live here. And I think the Village Alliance, we have the right experience, skills, and definitely determination to make that happen. So, I'm looking forward to being involved with this village for a very long time, and hopefully we'll see you all out there on the streets. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Serving the public in any elected capacity is a noble and laudable calling. Being a candidate takes courage, commitment, and a dedication to the common good. I would like to thank all the candidates for their participation this evening. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and to this community. Tonight's forum was videotaped and it will be available to you until Election Day. Remember, democracy is not a spectator sport. That's an actual league slogan. I encourage everyone to vote. Election Day is November 2nd, and there are 5 propositions as well as many candidates. Please learn about all these by going to 411.org, a website that has all of the information about the candidates as well as the propositions. Thank you again, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.